So now I want to talk a little bit about why we should do this. So, not just the reasons that I've talked about before, but also some of the really core reasons that are close to my heart at least. And one of them is equity. So this is a photo of Jack, who's one of my friends in the neighborhood, and he's 88 years old. He gets around on a bicycle, and he has a motorized scooter, which he really likes as well. And one of the things that I'm really thinking about when I'm thinking about how we're designing public spaces is how we can make sure that public spaces are good for everyone in our community. And that means seniors, who oftentimes after a certain point do not drive anymore. That means children who do not have access to a lot of things. That means people who cannot afford cars, people who do not want cars, people who have accessibility issues, so people, for example, in wheelchairs, people pushing their kids in strollers, people who are strolling. So these are all people that we need to be thinking about when we're designing our public spaces. And if we fail to think about those people and continue to have car-centric city planning, we leave a lot of those people out, and I think that's problematic. And just to really push that point home, I just want to say that in Grandview Woodland, I believe the median household income is about $35,000 a year. It's not very much. And when you contrast that to the price of a car in Canada, you can really see that it's really not fair, actually, to have one of our most important and beloved streets most accessible to only one type of transportation that's extremely expensive. And I think that's really important. I know I personally cannot afford a car. I think maybe perhaps others in this room cannot. So I think it's good to think about. The other thing is safety. So we believe that every single person in our community should be able to safely and comfortably use the road in their community using their transportation mode of choice. As you can see, one of the things that's really concerning is, although cycling and walking are really safe, when you actually do get into an altercation with a car, it's very clear who wins, right? If you're a person on a bicycle or you're a person walking and you get hit by a car, I think it's very clear who tends to get hurt. The other thing that I really want to push home here is that you shouldn't have to be brave to ride a bicycle. I know a lot of people. I volunteer at Kickstand, which is a community bike shop downstairs in this building. We get people coming in all the time, and I have conversations with people just all the time in different areas of work that I do, who say, I really want to ride a bike, but I am too scared. And that is really problematic. And this is actually from TransLink, and they did market research that showed that 41% of people in Metro Vancouver were interested in cycling for transportation, but concerned about safety. I feel like I'm being really serious. Maybe I feel like I'm a little bit on guard. So yeah, let me just, I don't want to be. I think that this is like a great topic. We can all be on board here, so yeah. Just as I open up the business topic, which is my favorite topic. And Nick and I have spoken about this, and I've spoken to other business owners in the room, many of whom have been super supportive, so thank you. So before I go into the business topic, I just want to reiterate, we love you guys. We are pro-business. Don't think that we're not, please. So one of the things that we've really seen that I find really interesting is that when you encourage people to use streets using flexible modes of transportation, like walking, like cycling, like skateboarding, whatever, those people can easily stop and go shopping. And if you compare that to a street like Hastings, for example, which has thousands of people speeding by in cars every day, but tons of businesses that, look like they're dead, you can really see that it's the people that can really easily, dismount or come off their mode of transportation and get into your business that are really useful. So that's something that I think we need to think about. It's not to say that people who access businesses with cars aren't important. They are, but other people are too. So one of the things, sorry, I just really quickly want to look and see. I didn't want to put that there. One of the things that we've seen in many cities, and this is from San Francisco, is once they've actually done things like put protected bike lanes onto different streets, business owners, when you go back a couple years later and ask them about it, they tend to actually be really happy about it, right? So this is from San Francisco. You had 65% saying that they actually thought it had a positive impact. And like other streets in Vancouver, this street in particular had a lot of, there was a lot of contention around it, people were fighting it, and then when they put it in, they go back later, and only 4% of businesses thought it had a negative impact. So I think that's something we ought to be thinking about. This is something that I really want to touch on here, which is that time and time again, businesses overestimate the amount of people, the amount of their shoppers that are actually accessing their business with car. So here we have from Toronto, Vancouver, Toronto, different neighborhoods that are walkable like Commercial Drive or whatnot, and we see that the majority of people are actually getting to these places by walking or biking. And when I talk to businesses, a lot of businesses on Commercial Drive, they tend to say that they think that their business is the same. But time and time again, they overestimate the amount of people that are getting there in cars. So it's something that I think we need to be aware of when we're moving forward, that there is this bias that we're running into over and over all over North America. So I think one of the most compelling things that we need to look at is how are people getting around, and is that changing? And it is changing dramatically. So one of the things that we're seeing is, for example, in Grandview Woodland, which is just about here, over 50% of people in this neighborhood do not get around by car. So I think that that's something we need to take very seriously when we're looking at Commercial Drive, because we need those people to be able to comfortably and safely access the street that we're talking about. The other thing that we need to look at is the growth in cycling. Cycling is the fastest growing mode of transportation in Vancouver. It is also one of the fastest growing modes of transportation in major cities all over North America right now. It's a very exciting and interesting trend. It's one that I'm watching very closely. And as you can see, these are from TransLink Trip Diaries. These are unprecedented levels of growth. So in Grandview Woodland over there, you can see where it cuts through. That's 158% growth in cycling. These are huge trends, and we'd be silly, particularly, on a business street, to not want to accommodate that in some way. This is another graph showing absolute numbers from 2006 to 2011 in Vancouver. As you can see, you have the only mode of transportation that is actually decreasing in the city is cars. And this was from an article that I posted on the Streets for Everyone social media, and it was one of the most shared items that I've ever seen. It got, literally flew around the internet, I saw from our stats, and that was pretty cool, actually. So I didn't write the article. But what's interesting, and what I love talking about with my dad, who loves cars, is that among millennials and a lot of young people, he's always surprised and thinks it's hilarious when he hears this. Cars don't have the cachet that they did back maybe in other decades or in other times. So, my dad always thinks it's funny when I say, yeah, I don't think cars are cool, and a lot of my friends don't. And I think that we, as business owners and as people who are making decisions, designing our communities, need to recognize that transportation trends are changing. This love of the car and desire to have a car to get everywhere we want to go is maybe not something that's being shared by generations who are coming up and, influencing the way that we use the city. Anyways, really quickly, this is just sort of a point about how per dollar, the best way that you can sort of get it per dollar, you can get a lot more people using other modes of transportation that aren't cars, because for a city making those investments, it's much more efficient to actually invest in something like cycling or transit versus something like car use. And finally, the other thing that I think is important here is that we have a growing population. I believe it's going to be about 1 million more people are going to move to Metro Vancouver in the next 30 years or so. we don't have space for them all to bring cars. So we better start thinking real quick about how we can make other modes of transportation as attractive as possible. Otherwise, we're going to have a big problem on our hands, because I can tell you that a city where every single one of those people is bringing cars is going to be really loud, it's going to be extremely congested, it's going to be extremely expensive, and it's going to have really dirty air. So that's something that we really should be thinking about, I think. Finally, on that point, I think a lot of people maybe don't realize this, but cars actually account for the largest portion of emissions in our city. And that's something that, we need to be looking at in terms of changing. So we need to be offering those people who maybe would be willing to use other modes of transportation the option should they so want it. And the last point I just want to make is that this isn't Gregor Robertson's idea. This isn't my idea. This is really no one in Vancouver's idea. People are doing this everywhere in the world now. So this is a picture from Times Square. Check it out. They actually, really recently, took Times Square, that's the before picture, and made it a pedestrian plaza. They also put a protected bike lane through it. This is, I believe this is Montreal. This is Seoul. They actually took out a freeway and uncovered a river that they had closed over decades ago. This is San Francisco. This is Chicago. So this is happening everywhere because transportation trends are happening everywhere. Cities are realizing that it's economically efficient, it's sensible to start inviting people to use other modes of transportation. It frees up parking for people that do want to keep using cars. It reduces congestion for people who do want to keep using cars. It's really these things are multifaceted investments that benefit everyone in the city. So before we go into the design, I just really want to quickly say something that I forgot to mention under equity, which is, one of the important things that we really want to be thinking about when we're making these investments is how can we improve our community while also ensuring that, the community that's here, both business and resident, are able to stay here and thrive here. And I think that's something that we hopefully can open up the floor and maybe talk about a little bit here, but I just want to sort of throw that out because I did forget to say it. So, the design. Woo! I just want to thank Mike, and he's going to come up and answer the really specific questions. But Mike, who's one of our Streets Forever and team members, he did put together this design, and we had a lot of conversations with the community over the past bunch of months. We've taken some of our core principles, and we sort of come up with some of these ideas. So what you can see here, this is a parking protected bike lane. There is parking. There is parking. It is maintained. Very little of it will be lost, if any. So we did that because we know it's a concern and we understand. The other thing that we've done is we want to give buses priority. So one of the things that we've done is a different way of doing the buses, which maybe Mike can explain a little bit more. So we actually put a bus bulge out, and what it does is it takes waiting transit users off of the sidewalk to give people who are walking a little bit more space. We think that's fair because there's a lot of pedestrians who use Commercial Drive, and the number 20 is one of the busiest routes in the city. We think that's equitable. The other thing that we see here is there's a different way of doing intersections, which we put forward. It's a starting point for conversation. So what it does is it brings the crosswalk closer together, which makes it a little bit less intimidating for pedestrians to cross the street. The other thing that it does is makes it easier for people to make left-hand turns using bicycles, which will make it more of an option for children and people who don't feel comfortable getting into the street to make a left-hand turn. And I think that this is just another nice little close-up photo of the crosswalk. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening.